Hello and welcome to We Talk Football. Today's video will be about the team of the season. We've just concluded the 23-24 season. We've had really great performances. We've had amazing games. I think we saw a lot of players really step up, really play well. We saw Phil Foden take the PFA Player of the Year award. Um, so we wanted to look at the team of the season. We did this a few months ago on the 25th of March. I think that was when we released a video on the team of the season. So check that out. Check out our last team of the season video on YouTube. And this is how it looks like. So before we had Vicario in goal. We had Ben White, William Saliba, and Virgil van Dijk, and Destiny Udogie at the back. We had Rodri, Declan Rice, and Phil Foden in midfield. And our attack was Salah, Haaland, and Heung-min Son. So let's see if there are any changes to that. We've seen some really good performances, as I said, from players like Isak, Bukayo Saka. We saw some teams down the table play really well. Like Luton, I enjoyed watching Luton and Ross Bartley. Late on in the season, Michael Olise, what a prospect he looks to be. I would love to have him at Arsenal. But yeah, let's check out the team of the season and let's see who makes it into the final team of the season, who's not in. Maybe some interesting picks, some contentious people in there or out. Please make sure you like and subscribe to our channel and also leave your comments. What is your team? Who would you include? Who did we miss out? So yeah, let's get into it. So there's only one place to start, and that's the goalkeeper, of course. The last team of the season that we did, the in the middle of the season, for me it was Vicario. I think because he had a really good start with Tottenham, especially because Tottenham have had Hugo Lloris as their number one for a very long time. He was their captain. I particularly don't think Hugo Lloris was world class, but I think he was just okay. He was good. He was a good leader. But people always say he won a World Cup. But he wasn't like that great. So I think already in that aspect, Tottenham have had a little bit of an upgrade with Vicario. I think Vicario is a better shot stopper. He's slightly bigger than Hugo Lloris. Not even slightly, he's sizable. He's a good size for a goalkeeper. And I think he's come in and slotted in very well for Spurs. I think, of course, there are other goalkeepers who are better than Vicario in the Premier League. But if we're talking just this season, of course, like you have Alisson, you have, I think Edison is a slightly better goalkeeper. I think Emi Martinez is better than Vicario. But I think just based on this season, looking at this season, Vicario has had Alisson, I was looking up the stats. Alisson has a better saves ratio. Vicario is at 64% and Alisson is at 73%. But that, numbers can be a little bit, they skew the story. And I think because Vicario played for Tottenham and we know Ange Postecoglou likes to play this ridiculously high line. We saw against Chelsea what they did at home. They played this crazy high line even when they went down, when they got some red cards. They still played that high line, which was crazy. It was suicide, really. And I think Vicario was a victim a bit of that high line. It's quite funny with Spurs, like if you look at Spurs, they have a few players who could make the team of the season, really. I think Mickey van der Ven had a really good season. He was clocked as the fastest player or the fastest defender in the Premier League this season. You have Destiny Udogie, who's had, I think a lot of people see him as a rookie. This was his first rookie season. And all those guys at the back for Spurs had really good seasons in the defense, but because they played this really high line, they conceded a lot of goals. Spurs conceded 61 goals this season. I think that's the third worst in the top 10. So of all the teams that finished in the top 10, Spurs had the third worst defense in terms of conceding goals, in terms of the numbers. But that's just really down to the high line that they played. They would concede a lot of goals in some games against Chelsea, against Arsenal. They conceded, a lot of goals because of that high line. But I think Vicario has had a really, really good season. And for me, he's my pick to be number one for goalkeeper of the season. Okay, so let's move on to the defenders. And let's start with the right back, fullbacks. So for me, I think this guy has been, if you look at the two seasons that we've just had, this season and last season, I think he's been the best right back in the league for two seasons. I'm not saying that last year he was the best. I think he was one of the best last season, but this year certainly he's been the best. Ben White, I think he's been absolutely awesome, seriously. And you have to you have to think about where he's come from. He started at Leeds as a centre back. He came through, got to Brighton, and he played centre back still. And then he came to Arsenal for, I think, for one season. Yeah, I think for one season he played at centre back. He was Gabriel's centre back partner before Saliba came back, returned to Arsenal from his loan spells in France. And then I think he's never looked back. He's been absolutely awesome. He's really good defensively. I think he's really good offensively as well. Of course, the right backs who are better than him offensively, like Trent. Trent is absolutely better than a lot of fullbacks going forward. But I just think, as an overall package, as a fullback, I think he's had a better season than Trent. And, shout out to a few fullbacks. Of course, you have to always look at Kyle Walker. He's still playing at a supremely high level, even in his 30s, I think. For me, Kyle Walker is the greatest right back in Premier League history. I know people make arguments for Gary Neville. Yes, but I think overall as a footballer, Kyle Walker is better. But anyway, I think just for this season, Ben White has had a really, really good season. There were games where he's come up really big for Arsenal. Like I remember against Brentford, he came up with 2 assists and we won the game 2-1. So offensively, he does have the skills. Defensively, he's really good as well. If you look at the statistics, he's had more clearances, more headed clearances, more tackles. So than Trent, and I think he's had a really good season. Now, of course, I think Trent had an injury early on in the season that kept him out for like 3 months. But I think if Trent hadn't had been injured and he didn't miss time, I think he probably would be the right back of the season. Maybe because he was having a really awesome season. I remember he scored a goal against Manchester City at the Etihad that was really big and clutch. But I think overall, in a complete season, Ben White has had a really good season. And also, he's contributed in set pieces. Um, think about it. Fullbacks are usually shorter, but Ben White is a proper 6'1". He's tall, big, but he can move. He can control the ball really well. Remember that nutmeg he had on Doku at the Emirates against Manchester City? That was really awesome. So I think that shows you the level of skill that he has as a fullback. So I think this season he's been the best right back of this season. Now, let's move on to the other side, the left side. Now, when you look at this guy, he plays for Spurs, and as I said earlier in the earlier on in the video, when I mentioned that Spurs have quite a few players who could seriously be in the team of the season from their defense. Mickey, Vicario obviously is in my team of the season, but Destiny Udogi also has to be in the team of the season. I think as a fullback, as a left back, he's got really great energy. He can bomb forward, he can come back and defend pretty well for Spurs. And I think he's been injured for the past few months, and it's really shown because, as I said, Ange likes to play this really high line, and it's dependent on really fast, pacey defenders to recover. Like Mickey van der Ven, as I said, he's clocked as the fastest defender in the Premier League this season. And Destiny Udogi certainly has the pace to recover and come back when in trouble. But I think he's had a really good. I think this is probably his breakout season. It's not his debut season. I think he came in last year under Conte, but this year he's really shone. I think his offensive qualities have really been, they've been highlighted because of the way Spurs play, because of the way Ange likes to play football. Really offensive, really high up the pitch, trying to score goals. And I think Destiny Udogi had a really good season. Also, and this is not a slight on Destiny Udogi, I'm just saying there wasn't a lot of competition this year. This year, I don't know, like you can really, you struggle to think of any other left backs that were awesome. Nathan Ake for Manchester City, yes, he was really good. But Ben Chilwell for Chelsea was in and out. I really like him, but he wasn't that great. Zinchenko wasn't really that good as well. I think Arsenal chopped and changed that position quite a lot this season. Hopefully they get that fixed next season. You had Zinchenko, Kivior, Tamiyasu. Timber was injured in the first game of the season, so that affected things. But, big ups to Destiny Udogi. I think he's done really good. And Spurs will be very happy with having him, I think, moving forward into the future. Yeah. So, Destiny Udogi. Now, let's look at the centre backs. All right. Centre backs. So, of course, we need two centre backs. But I think the obvious place to start would be William Saliba. He's had a really awesome season. I think that's a no-brainer. I think this season he's absolutely been the best centre back in the Premier League. You can see I'm smiling talking about him because he's that awesome. I think we need to keep him. Oh, well, let me say Arsenal. Arsenal need to keep him for 10 plus years. Seriously, he's that good. He's young. He wants to play for Arsenal. He wants to win with Arsenal. He loves the club. He's been a supporter of the club. He's been seen, in pictures with Arsenal gear since he was a young boy, a little boy. So I think he's been, he's wanted to play for Arsenal. He's at Arsenal and he's showing why he loves the club. He's really good. I think if Arsenal push on and they win a title or a few titles in his time, he'll go down absolutely as one of the greatest centre backs in Premier League history. That's how good he is, I think. That's the potential that he has. And I think this season he showed it. He played every minute of every single game in the Premier League for Arsenal, the first player in the club's history to do that. And I think that shows a level of consistency. And, that was a big difference with last season because remember last season when he went down, that's when Arsenal's form also kind of dipped. And that's when we lost the title. And I think since he's had the season that he's had, playing all games, all minutes, you saw the difference. Arsenal were the best defense in the league, wasn't even close. In a 38-game season, 38 games, Arsenal conceded only 29 goals. Seriously, the only team that kept Manchester City out for 2 games, didn't score at the Emirates, didn't score at the Etihad, The only side that's ever kept two clean sheets against Erling Haaland in the same season. I think that speaks for you. He was the man of the match at the Etihad. He was the man of the match, man of the match against Manchester City at the Emirates. He also was the man of the match against Liverpool at Anfield. That shows you how big he is. Figuratively and literally, he's huge. He had 18 clean sheets when he played, and he was immense. And I think he was the best centre back in the league this season. You know, anyone who wants to fight that, but I think you'll be wrong. But anyway, and so let's also talk about his centre back partner for team of the season. Now, this might be a little bit more of a debate. So let's check out who's his partner. So for me, this guy has to be Saliba's partner at centre back. Of course, he had quite a few centre backs who had excellent seasons. Mickey van der Ven had an excellent season. I think obviously Virgil van Dijk had an excellent season, but for me, he doesn't make it. Virgil van Dijk. I know he was nominated not only for the best centre back in the league this season, but Virgil van Dijk was also nominated for the PFA Player of the Year award, right? So I think earlier on in the season, he was awesome. He looks like the Rolls-Royce Virgil van Dijk. He looked awesome. He looked big and strong again. I remember a few seasons ago, he had that big injury against Everton. Pickford jumped on his knee, studs on his knee, and I think that really messed up with Virgil van Dijk. He didn't run the same. He didn't turn the same. I've always said Virgil van Dijk is one of the greatest centre-backs I've ever seen, really, because there's nothing he can do. He's great aerially. He can run with you. He's great with the ball at his feet. He's strong. He's got everything as a centre-back. But I think that injury robbed him of a few really good seasons. But I think this season he looked really good. But I've gone with Gabriel. I think Gabriel has been really, really good for Arsenal as well. Another one of the Arsenal boys who are part of that best defense in the league this season. And I think it's hard to argue with that. He had 15 clean sheets. And remember, Gabriel missed the first two games for Arsenal this season. And it at first it looked like he wasn't in favour to be playing centre back with Saliba this season. At first it looks like, I think Mikel Arteta was trying to experiment a little too much, because at the beginning of the season he had Thomas Partey playing right back. What is he doing there? Right? So anyway, I think that was a little bit of Mikel Arteta trying to be too smart for his own good. And then I think first few games of the season, we struggled a little bit with our flow, with our defense. And then Gabriel came back, and he's never looked back as well. He played like Saliba, almost every game. Of course, as I said, he missed 2 games, but he finished with 15 clean sheets. He was also a part of that, defense that was awesome. 29 goals, just 29 goals. You see, that's why I've had Ben White, Saliba, and for me at left-sided centre-back, Gabriel. He's been awesome. He's just gotten his call-up to play for Brazil, which I think he deserved to play for Brazil a bit early. I think he was, extremely unlucky not to be called up for the 2022 World Cup. But that's passed, and, I think he's proved himself, and they have a really good partnership. I think Saliba and Gabriel were the best centre-back partnership in the world this season, not just in the Premier League. For me, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a better centre-back pairing than those two. I'm not saying they're the best defenders in the world, but I'm saying as a pairing, as a partnership, I think they're the best in the world. They were the best in the world this season. And I think you have to have them, You have to have both of them in there. And shout out to Virgil van Dijk, as I said, he had a really awesome season. But, I think, and also Virgil van Dijk had a lot of partners. Kwanzaa at some point, Matip, he would have Konate. But I think as a consistent centre back pairing, Saliba and Gabriel were awesome. They're the best defense in the league. It's hard to argue with that, man. Let's move on to midfield, the engine. Big part of any team, really. And I think this guy has a chance of going down as one of the greatest in his position already. He's only 27 years old. Rodri, he's such a leader. He plays big. He is big, literally, physically. But he has such great technique for a person his size. I think he's 6'3", 6'2". He's huge. He's big. But for a player of his size, he covers a lot of ground for Manchester City. He protects the defense really well. And he has, seriously, a V8 engine. Because he doesn't... I know early on in the season, he complained about being tired and playing so many games. But when he is on the pitch, he looks imperious. He looks huge. He looks, in control, seriously. Because he makes sure that Manchester City keep ticking. And also he goes forward in good spurts. He picks his moments when he has to go forward. And I think you've seen it scoring goals against Chelsea this season, scoring crucial goals. I think he scored in the final game of the season for Manchester City as well. And he's really a great leader to have mentally as well in the locker room for Manchester City. He does push them forward. And I think you can see he has an argument of being the best player there at Manchester City, seriously, because Manchester City haven't lost a game with him playing since the 3rd of February, a 1-0 defeat away to Spurs last season. So this season he was undefeated. Of course, earlier on in the season he got a red card, he missed some games, he was suspended, and Manchester City didn't win. That was when Arsenal won against Manchester City 1-0. And I think that was also time when they played Aston Villa and they lost. So you see, when he's not there, Manchester City lose. It's as simple as that. When he is there, they look invincible. So I think, especially for Manchester City, if he isn't the best player at Manchester City, he's absolutely their most important player. Because when he plays, they don't lose, seriously. And also another thing to think about, they don't have anyone else who can play that position. Of course, they had Calvin Phillips, but now he's gone. And I think Pep didn't really love Calvin Phillips. He never really put his arm around Calvin Phillips and, tried to play him, tried to work things out with him. So I think they don't have anyone else to play that position. Of course, we've seen John Stones play that position, but I think Pep and Manchester City would really prefer to have Rodri playing all the time, every game. So for me, Rodri has been the best DM. He's going to protect my defense. And good luck scoring. Good luck winning against that team. Now, let's move on to his two partners in midfield. Let's see. I think these two guys have been probably the best players in the league. But let's see. You'll see. With this guy, you can try and fight me, but, it's not going to be much of a fight because you'll be fighting a losing battle. The best 6 or the best midfielder, I think, or the best 8, whatever you want to call it. You have hybrids in this modern era where you have midfielders who can play offensively, defensively. But I think Declan Rice is a little bit of a throwback to players past who could play offensively, defensively. Players like Paul Scholes, Roy Keane, Vieira, I think Steven Gerrard, he can absolutely play, similar to those guys. He has, as I said, like Rodri earlier, a big engine to play in midfield. Declan Rice, as I said earlier, he's awesome. I think, you always hear Arsenal fans say we should have paid West Ham more money for Declan Rice because he's been worth more than £100 million for Arsenal. I don't know if Arsenal want to pay a bit more than that, but absolutely he's been worth every pound paid for him. He's been excellent. I think, in my opinion, I think he was the best player in the Premier League this season, especially the first half of the season. But he played at such a high level, and he was absolutely vital for Arsenal to being second again, close. Um, and in my opinion, this is my opinion. I think Arsenal were the best team in the Premier League this season. They didn't win, which kind of nullifies my point. But anyway, we're not talking about that. Declan Rice was awesome. I think he had a lot of great moments, especially big late moments where he scored late goals. We saw it against Manchester United, scored a really late goal. He came up big and clutch against Luton Town, scoring the winner. And if you remember, when Arsenal played Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, Arsenal were 2-0 down and he scored the first goal. Saw the keeper out of his line, first time chip over, curled in, beautiful finish from midfield. He's a midfielder who can do that. He can tackle, he can go back, he can move forward. His passing, I think, is underrated. He can keep the ball very well. He had a 90% pass completion rate this season. And I think that's a part of his game that's a little bit underrated. I think more than anything for Declan Rice, he's a really smart player. He has high ball IQ. I think I've mentioned a few players with high ball IQ in this team. Like Rodri also has really great IQ. He's really smart, and I think Declan Rice fits in there. He's also a leader. You'll see him barking and telling people where to go, where to cover. And he's shown great leadership coming from West Ham, where he won the Conference League last season as the captain. And if that isn't a nice way to leave the team, I don't know what is. So I think West Ham not winning against Manchester City in the last game is a little bit of a disservice to Declan Rice. And I think, they should have won. They should have done something to give something back to Declan Rice. But yeah, he's my 8 for team of the season. So Declan Rice has been awesome. Let's see who's going to be the offensive player in that midfield. And I think that's pretty obvious. Phil Foden, PFA Player of the Year. He's 23. That's his first award. He's been absolutely phenomenal. I can't argue. Of course, I said Declan Rice has been the best player in the Premier League this season. I can't argue with Phil Foden being the PFA Player of the Year. Seriously, he's been really good. 19 goals, 8 assists this season, and he didn't score a penalty, which I think is a little notch above the other players that are usually compared with Phil Foden. Bukayo Saka this season, Cole Palmer, those kind of players that are always compared to Phil Foden. But I think this season he's been, better than them. And that proves it. Didn't score any penalties. And I think he came up big in big games as well against Manchester United. I remember they were down 1-0 and he came up big. He scored 2 goals. He controlled the game. The way he controlled the game, the way he moved the tempo of the game, he went on the offensive. He was aggressive going forward. His passing was excellent. He'd take on players. And that was just an example. One game, he scored his first hat-trick. I like Phil Foden. And I think, like when I talk to Manchester City fans, they always say he has, five Premier League titles, and I always say, but he wasn't really involved in those. If Phil Foden wasn't there in the previous league titles for Manchester City, they still would have won. And I think this is his, he can claim this one as his title. Like he can claim it to be like, I was a big part of this. I don't think Manchester City would have won the title if he wasn't there. Because remember, in the middle of the season or at the beginning of the season, Kevin De Bruyne picked up an injury and he was out for about 4 months, and he returned against Newcastle. Remember when he scored a goal and had an assist for Bob? That's KDB. But before, when KDB was out, Phil Foden ran the show. He was consistent. He played every game. Everyone was saying this is his time to step up, and he did. He stepped up big games, big goals, and I think he's had an excellent season. And I think also I think this is his preferred position. He wants to play this position. He wants to play offensive midfielder, the number 10. He's comfortable there. I don't think. I I think he doesn't want to. I think he can play on the wing, but I think if you want to see the best of Phil Foden, this is where you play him. Great goals, great contributions, so Phil Foden. Let's go to the left side of the attack. Now this guy has been, I personally like him. I don't think he's world class, as many people have said, but I think this season he's had a much better season than last season. Absolutely. Heung-min Son, for me, makes the team of the season. On the left, now I know this season he's played a bit more centrally, but he's had many games and many moments where he's played on the left side of the offense, and he's been as good as ever. I think this season was even more highlighted, especially for Spurs, seeing, Harry Kane move to Bayern Munich. And I think a lot of impetus and onus was going to be put onto Heung-min Son's shoulders. And I think he took up the challenge really well, scoring 17 goals, providing 10 assists. I think he was really great in that aspect, because it's kind of hard, because now he had to be the captain and he had to be the best player at Spurs, especially coming from the season he had last season. It was a massive improvement. I think he probably wasn't really happy with the way Spurs were playing under Antonio Conte. And I think Ange Postecoglou is the kind of manager that he likes to play under, because he's very offensive. He's going to get a lot of the ball. He's going to play fast, downhill. That's his game. And I think he showed that, being very, very comfortable in that kind of system. And I think Heung-min Son makes the team. Of course, he had a lot of players that were really great, like Jared Bowen, Mohamed Kudus, Mohamed Salah, but for me, they don't make the team of the season. On the left side of the offense, on the left side of the attack, any other season, maybe someone else would have made it, but I think this season, Heung-min Son has been excellent, has been really, really good. But also quite mad because he missed the chance against Manchester City. That could have won us the league, so... But he has to make the team of the season. So this guy, I'm going to put him on the right side of the attack. Of course, some people might say signing of the season. For me, it's Declan Rice. Declan Rice won Player of the Year at the London Awards. Last time I checked, Chelsea were in London. Cole Palmer plays in London, but he plays on the right side of the attack for me. Cole Palmer, of course, 22 goals, 11 assists in the season. Coming from Manchester City, you would have thought that he might have took some time to settle in at Chelsea, especially seeing that he's a young player. Didn't take really that long. And I think also it helped having um, um, Mauricio Pochettino there, because Mauricio Pochettino has had a history of working with young players and bringing the best out of them. Chelsea fans might look at this season as a really, disappointing season, which it was. And, I'm not going to try and encourage Chelsea fans or Chelsea Football Club. It was a disappointing season. But if anything was really great, it was Cole Palmer, one of the greatest, or maybe not. Let me not hyperbole. That was hyperbole. One of the best. Absolutely yes, maybe. First seasons for a young player at a new club. Yes, I can say that. One of the best first seasons at a new club for a young player. Yeah, I think so. I think so. Scored 22 goals for a big team like Chelsea, 11 assists. He was the leader of that team. I think you could absolutely see that because of the penalties that he took. Being young, new at a club, and stepping up to take, penalties, scoring big goals in big games against Manchester City. So that was really good. I think he was excellent. Absolutely, one of the players of the season. One thing I will say, he scored 9 penalties though. If you discount the penalties that he scored, he would have had the same amount of goals as Kai Havertz. But Kai Havertz also had a really good season. So not to discredit the young man, he was really great. And he makes it on the left side of the attack for the Premier League team of the season. Absolutely, Cole Palmer. Now, the final spot goes to a guy who I I don't particularly rate highly as a player. As just a footballer, I don't think he's really great. And a lot of people, I think, would agree with me. Erling Haaland. Now, he's a scorer of many goals. He's a great scorer of many goals, but I can't say he's a great player. I can't say he's absolutely the best player in the world. Now, people say he should have won the Ballon d'Or last season. And I would agree with that in some instances. But what I will say is, I'm not mad that Lionel Messi won the Ballon d'Or last season. You could make a strong case for Messi, because I think what Messi did, winning the World Cup with that Argentina team, was a slightly better achievement than Erling Haaland winning the treble with Manchester City. I say that because uh, before Manchester City signed Erling Haaland, remember they got knocked out in the semi-final of the Champions League by Real Madrid, and everyone, the big thing of that whole season was Manchester City need to get a striker to get over the hump. But seriously, if you really look at it, I think, world strikers like Harry Kane, Erling Haaland, Robert Lewandowski, those guys, top strikers, need Manchester City more than Manchester City needs a striker, because they create so many chances. You'll definitely score goals. Look at Raheem Sterling. He looks like an awesome player at Manchester City anyway. But not to go on and bang on about Erling Haaland. I think he was phenomenal. Again, he scored 27 goals in what many people say was an off season. It wasn't his best performances, but I think he showed a lot of great things. I think he scored a lot of goals for Manchester City that proved crucial. And I think, you know what? I think that was the difference between Manchester City and Arsenal winning the league. Because if you really look at it, Arsenal didn't have a great attack. Um, Kai Havertz scored 12 goals. Bukayo Saka 16 goals. Martinelli chipped in with about 4 goals. And you had Leandro Trossard, who was excellent. but no one really pushed Arsenal over the top. No one pushed Arsenal over the edge, scoring 20 goals in the Premier League or 30 goals in all competitions. You know, if you get a player like that at Arsenal, I think that pushes them over the edge. That pushes them over the top where they win the league at least, or they go forward into the semi-finals, or maybe even the final of the Champions League. And I think that's the difference. He's a huge X factor for Manchester City. He scores a lot of goals. He scored 27 goals this season. And you could have made a case for Ollie Watkins, but in the end, Ollie Watkins scored 19 goals, a little short. I mean, overall, Ollie Watkins had more goals and assists. I can't really remember the numbers right now off the top of my head, but he had more assists and goals than Erling Haaland. But what do you want from a striker? I think the first thing that you want is goals, not really assists. And the team is catered towards creating goals for Erling Haaland and other players anyway. So if Erling Haaland doesn't create goals, he's absolutely going to score goals. Last season, he scored 36 goals. This season, 27 goals. Man, that's crazy. That's crazy. But Erling Haaland has been extraordinary. He's been phenomenal. I don't think he's the best striker in the world. I think that is Harry Kane. Harry Kane proved it this season. He scored 36 goals in a down year for Bayern Munich and in less games as well in the Bundesliga. So I think Harry Kane is the best striker in the world, but close behind is absolutely, it's Erling Haaland. 27 goals is hard to achieve. But I think, yeah, that was that's my team of the season. Let me know what you think. I'll also give you the bench. I also made a bench. I think Emi Martinez makes the bench. Trent makes the bench. Virgil van Dijk makes the bench. Alexander Isak makes the bench. Martin Odegaard makes the bench. Ollie Watkins makes the bench as well. That team, what could we not win? And the manager, for me, manager of the season, Mikel Arteta. Best defense in the league, the most wins in Arsenal history, Premier League history, unbeaten against the Big Six. Also, he had a better head-to-head record against Pep. So for me, I think manager of the season would be Mikel Arteta. Our team of the season, my team of the season, what I think these were the best players in the Premier League this season. Make sure you comment down below. What do you think of our selections? What do you think of the players that I chose? Like and subscribe on our YouTube channel, We Talk Football 24. Also follow us on Instagram, We Talk Football 24, and on Facebook, We Talk Football. So make sure you like, subscribe, follow our pages, share our content. We make lots and lots of football content. Also, a lot of other content coming in the near future. We'll be looking forward to the Euro 24 tournament. We'll also be looking forward to the transfer window. The season is about to close in Europe, and in South Africa. We'll be looking at transfers, players coming in, coming out of your club. Tell us who you'd like to see at your club. Lots of content, lots of games coming forward for next season. More streams, more videos. So make sure you follow us, like us, follow us. Comment. What do you think of this team of the season? Who would you change? What would be your team of the season? And thank you. We'll see you next time. Yo.